Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my 2024 UFL predictions. And real quick, if you guys don't know what the UFL it is a merged league between the USFL and the XFL. It stands for United Football League, and it kicks off this Saturday, March 30th. But getting into my predictions, beginning with the USFL conference, and fourth or last in the conference, I have the Michigan Panthers. So this is a Panthers team that is hard to evaluate. They were decent last season, making the playoffs despite having just a 4-6 record, and they should be decent. Although it's hard to tell if they will actually have a good regular season, because I highly doubt they will be able to make the playoffs at 4-6 again this year. Offensively for the Panthers, they're yet to name a starting quarterback and have an ongoing battle between former Packers quarterback Danny Etling and also EJ Perry. Now, Perry was the quarterback for a part of the season last year with the Panthers, and in his limited action, he was pretty good. Now, outside of the quarterback positions, the Panthers have some pretty good skill players. At running back, they did unfortunately lose running back Reggie Corbin, but they brought in a pair of good running backs, Wes Hills and Matt Colburn. And Wes Hills actually led the USFL in rushing yards last season with 679, and also had 10 touchdowns, which was second in the league. At receiver, the Panthers have some good players as well. They bring back leading receiver Trey Quinn from a season ago, along with Marcus Sims and Devin Ross. Plus, they added Devin Gray and Jordan Sewell to the group, and Devin Gray was seventh in receiving yards in the USFL last season. Now, along the offensive line for the Panthers, they made some major improvements to help an offensive line that was definitely below average a season ago. And moving to the defensive side of the ball, the Panthers should have an extremely strong defense. Along the defensive line, they bring back edge rusher Breland Speaks, who led the league in sacks last season. Plus, they bring in two former NFL defensive tackles. Then at linebacker, defensive player of the year from a season ago, Frank Ginder returns. And in the secondary, they return star cornerback Levante Taylor, and also add corners Keith Gibson and Nate Brooks, as well as safety Bryce Torrendon. So overall, I think this is a Panthers team that has a lot of potential. They can finish as high as second in the USFL conference, and as well as fourth. They have an offense with a lot of upside. Their defense should be very good and one of the best defenses in the league. But I have the Panthers finishing last in the USFL conference with a 3-7 record. But I think they definitely have a lot of potential to be a lot better than that. Third in the USFL conference, we have the Houston Roughnecks. And yes, the Roughnecks were an XFL team. This is actually just the Houston Gamblers, who were in the USFL, rebranded as the Roughnecks. That's why the Roughnecks seems to be an XFL team in the USFL conference. It was really the USFL's Houston team just rebranded. But the Roughnecks, they're another interesting team. They have an incredibly high ceiling, and it starts offensively at the quarterback position. They have a new face at the quarterback spot, and that is Jarrett Guantanamo. He spent his college time at Tennessee and Washington State, and also saw some NFL time with the Broncos and Cardinals, and he definitely has a lot of upside. Now, while they do have a new quarterback, he will be helped out by a strong rushing attack led by superstar running back Mark Thompson, who led the USFL with 14 rushing touchdowns last season and was named the league's Offensive Player of the Year. Now, something to note, Thompson will not be available to start the season due to a knee injury he suffered in training camp, but the Roughnecks still have backup running back TJ Pledger, who was good filling in for Thompson when he missed the first two games of the season last season. Now, at receiver, the Roughnecks return players who were productive last year and 2 seasons ago as well. They bring back leading receiver Justin Hall, along with other key contributors Anthony Ratliff Williams and Kike Chisholm. They also signed Kirk Merritt and Cyril Grayson, both of which have NFL experience. And for tight ends, the Roughnecks brought in a pair of above-average tight ends, both from the Generals, Braden Bowman and Woody Brandom. Moving to the defensive side of things, the Roughnecks, they have a great defensive line consisting of players such as Adam Rodriguez, Chris Odom, and Toby Johnson. And all three of those players have made an all-USFL team in the past 2 seasons. At linebacker for the Roughnecks, they have a former NFL first-round draft pick in Reuben Foster, who was great last season with the Maulers. And overall, the Roughnecks are a team with a lot of potential. If Derek Guantanamo ends up being a good quarterback, this is a team that can finish as high as third in the conference. I have them there at 5-5, but this team, a lot of potential, could also underwhelm a little bit. I think they should be solid. Second in the USFL conference, I have the Memphis Showboats. They're another team that has a lot of potential, but I think I have them at second because I think they might be the team in the entire UFL that improved the most over the offseason. Because they made some major changes, but a lot of them were extremely good changes. They brought in former Stars quarterback Case Cookus, who's already one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And around Cookus, they have a lot of good players. They greatly improved their running back room with the 2022 USFL Offensive Player of the Year Darius Victor, and also another former New Jersey General Trey Williams. And these backs will help the Showboats rushing attack greatly, as a season ago they didn't have a single runner have more than 100 carries or 300 rushing yards. Moving on to the receiver position, they bring back leading receiver Vinny Papel, and they added some production from receivers such as Lee Morris, DeAndre Overton, Jonathan Adams, and D. Anderson, all of which were productive in the USFL last season. In addition to the receiver position, the Showboats also brought in star tight end Sage Surratt, who had a breakout year with the Breakers last year, totaling 552 yards on 50 catches, which ranked third in the USFL. And as far as the offensive line goes for the Showboats, this should be a pretty good unit, anchored by Jaron Jones and Terry Poole, both of which have made an all-USFL team in 2022. And moving to the defensive side of the ball for the Showboats, there was also major improvement here. They signed former NFL player PJ Hall along the defensive line, also signed Tyshawn Render, who was good for the Generals, as well as they still have star nose tackle John Atkins. Linebacker for Memphis, they have a great duo consisting of Greg Reeves and Vontae Diggs. And in the secondary, top players from last season like Quentin Meeks and Kyrie Woods are back. Plus, they brought in Christian McFarland from the Stallions. So this, I think, is a good Showboat squad. I think they have a lot of potential. They will be miles better from last season, and they were still a solid team last year. I think they're going to see a lot of improvement. Might not show that way record-wise because I think there's a lot of talent in this league, and it's been hard for me to find wins for a lot of these teams. But I have them finishing second in the USFL conference and making the playoffs with a respectable 5-5 record. And winning the USFL, I have the Birmingham Stallions. They are the back-to-back USFL champions. They have been dominant during that stretch, and I expect them to be elite once again. The roster is absolutely loaded all around. Offensively, they actually have questions at the quarterback position, but only because they have three really good quarterbacks. They have to replace the 2023 USFL MVP Alex Magoo, but the three players they have to choose from to replace him are all really good. The first is their quarterback in the 2022 season, Jamar Smith, who led them to a championship. The second is former Ole Miss quarterback and NFL third-round draft pick, one of the most notable players in the league, Matt Corral. And finally, Adrian Martinez, who is a dual-threat quarterback and spent his time in college at Kansas State and Nebraska. Now, the Stallions are yet to announce a starting quarterback. It's expected to be either Jamar Smith or Matt Corral, but whoever ends up starting at the quarterback spot, I think will play at a high level, because not only the amount of talent behind them on the depth chart, and they'll be forced to play at a high level, but there is so much talent around them on the offense, it's going to elevate the quarterback play if it's not already good, which I think it will be. Now, at running back, the Stallions return their leading rusher for each of the past two seasons, that is CJ Marable, plus they return Ricky Pearson, and also Larry Roontree, probably said his name incorrectly, who's a former NFL running back. The receivers and tight ends are also great for the Stallions, as they return Deion Kane and Marlon Williams. Plus, they signed former Green Bay Packer Amari Rogers and also brought in Isaiah Zuber, Kevin Austin, and Gary Jennings. They also still have the league's best tight end in Jace Sternberger, and the Stallions' offensive line is arguably the best in the UFL. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, the Stallions are arguably just as good as they are offensively. Will Davis returns, who's anchored a strong defensive line each of the past couple seasons. Carlos Davis and Taco Charlton are also players they added along the defensive line. The linebacker position is where things get really exciting for the Stallions. They return Scooby Wright, who's been a fan favorite, but they also added two all-USFL linebackers in DeMarcus Gates, who was actually in the NFL last year with the Bears after being with the Stallions in 2022. And they also added Kayava Tizino, who was one of the best defensive players in the league last year with the Maulers. And in the secondary, they also saw major improvements where they signed all USFL cornerback Mark Gilbert plus several other good players. So this is an insanely good Stallions team. I would be shocked if they do not win the USFL conference. I have them going 7-3, and it was really hard to find 3 losses for this team. Moving on to the XFL conference, fourth or last in the conference, I have the Arlington Renegades. Now, this may seem surprising because they are the defending XFL champions, but they weren't actually that good when they won the championship. They went just 4-6 in the regular season, and I think that could, like the Panthers, not have them have a ton of success this season. The Renegades have 3 different quarterbacks who are good. They have Mr. Spring Football himself, Luis Perez, former East Carolina quarterback Holton Ehlers, and also former Incarnate Word quarterback Lindsey Scott. Now, the Renegades have named Luis Perez their starting quarterback, and he's a very solid player, but I just wonder about the offense's ceiling with him because he's solid, but I don't really think the offense can truly be an explosive offense with him. I think they'll be good, but nothing truly special. At the running back position, the Renegades returned their leading rusher from last season, Devon Smith, as well as backup Letty Brown. Moving to the receivers, they added Deontay Burnett, who was good with the Roughnecks last year, plus they still have Tyler Vaughns, Devonta Parker, and Gowan Winningham. And now I know this guy isn't a receiver, but they still have an above-average option in Sal Cannella, who's a tight end in the pass game. And the offensive line was not great for the Renegades last year, but they made some improvements this offseason, although after making those improvements, they don't have much depth along the offensive line, which could be a concern. Moving on to the defense, which should once again be the strength of this team. They have a really good defensive line, led by former NFL star Vic Beasley. Moving back to linebacker, they have a great duo of tackling machine Donald Payne and Colin Schooler. And in the secondary, there was turnover, actually major turnover, losing 3 really good corners, Devontae Bosby, Will Hill, and Joe Powell. But they have several new additions to the team that can replace them. So overall, the Renegades are a team that has potential, but I think their offense could hold them back. I just really don't get that excited about their offense. I think they'll be in a lot of close games because of their defense, but I have them last in the XFL with a 3-7 record. Third in the XFL conference, I have the San Antonio Brahmas. So this team that was not good last year, going just 3-7. They have now hired Wade Phillips as their head coach and have upgraded their roster. Now, the Brahmas offense has major improvements, especially at the quarterback position, and that starts with Chase Garbers, who's been named the team's starting quarterback. He is a dual threat quarterback who has NFL experience with the Raiders, and hopefully he can provide stability to a quarterback position, which was a major problem for the Brahmas last season. At running back, the Brahmas lost 2 top rushers from last season, Jacques Patrick and Kalen Balaj, but replaced them with Anthony McFarland, a former Pittsburgh Steeler. Plus, they added Josh Lovett, who is a solid player with the Vipers last year. Now, the Brahmas also have a good group of pass catchers consisting of John Shea Kirkland, Cody Latimer, and former NFL wide receiver Marquez Stevenson, as well as others. Plus, they have former Notre Dame tight end standout Alizé Mack. The offensive line, there was major improvements, and that will greatly help a unit that was terrible last season. And overall, I think this offense should show major improvement from last season to this season. And I think that all starts with Chase Garber as a quarterback. Defensively for the Brahmas, they have 2 all-XFL players along the defensive line, Kayvon Patton and Delonte Scott. They also signed linebacker Devontae Beckett, who was good last season with the Roughnecks. And they also brought back Jordan Williams, who was very good with the Brahmas last year, making the all-XFL team. And finally, in the secondary, they have new faces to replace a standout corner in all-XFL cornerback Luke Barku, but the addition should be solid. This is a Brahmas team with a lot of potential. I think they should be pretty good. I have them third in the conference with a 5-5 record, just missing out in the playoffs. Second, in the XFL, I have the DC Defenders. The Defenders should be really good once again. They lost in the XFL championship game last season, and they returned a lot of key players, and that starts with the quarterback Jordan Teamu. He was great last season, was named the Offensive Player of the Year, and he's back for another season. Now, unfortunate news in terms of injuries for the Defenders before the season even starts. Standout running back Abram Smith, who led the XFL in rushing yards last season, has torn his ACL in training camp and is out for the season. Now, the Defenders do have other good running backs like Puka Williams and Cameron Harris, but they aren't Abram Smith. Their offense was built around him. He was super good last season, and that is a major loss. Moving on to receiver, the Defenders also lost their top two receivers from the previous season, Lucky Jackson and Chris Blair, but they bring in some good pass catchers to replace them, such as Braden Smith and Chris Rowland, plus also former NFL wide receiver TK Kuti. And at tight end, they have another former NFL player in Caden Smith. Now, the offensive line is a question mark for the Defenders after losing several good players, and that could be a unit that makes or breaks their season. They get good offensive line play. I think this could be a really good team. If not, they could struggle a little bit. And defensively, for the Defenders, they should be pretty good and live up to their name. Along the defensive line, they returned star edge rusher Davin Bellamy, and they also added TJ Barnes and Dennis Johnson. Moving to linebackers, their top two from last season, Reggie Northrup and Francis Bernard, both return. And finally, in the secondary, most starters return, led by standout Michael Joseph. And the Defenders are a team who should be really well-rounded, definitely have a chance to win the UFL championship. They have a really good team. I think they have a lot of potential. I have them finishing second in the XFL with a 6-4 record, making the playoffs. I could see them winning the conference, but the Abram Smith injury really concerns me with how a huge part of their offense he was. And winning the XFL, I have the St. Louis Battlehawks. They actually missed the season last year despite going 6-4. They're back for another chance. Offensively, star quarterback AJ McCarron, the 2023 XFL MVP, is back to lead the way in what should be a great offense. Outside of McCarron, they have former NFL running back Wayne Gallman, who was also a standout during his time at Clemson. At receiver, they have four really good players, those being Ja'Cour Pearson, who led the XFL in receiving yards, also Blake Jackson, Darius Shepard, and Hakeem Butler. Now, Ja'Cour Pearson is actually injured and will miss about half the season, but the Battlehawks definitely have the depth at the receiver position to replace him, and once Pearson returns at midseason, he will give the offense a huge boost. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, they should be good. They improved the defensive line, adding edge rusher Pita Tamanapiu. I probably said his name way off, but he was the XFL Defensive Player of the Year last year. And then in the back end of the defense, in the secondary, they added ball hawking corner Channing Stribling, who was great for the Stars in the past 2 seasons in the USFL. So the Battlehawks, they should have a really good season. I have them going 6-4 and winning the XFL. And my playoff predictions. So the top 2 teams in each conference make the playoffs, and they play each other in the championship games for each conference, and obviously the conference champions play in the UFL championship game. In the USFL conference championship, I have the Stallions defeating the Showboats, and in the XFL conference championship game, I have the Battlehawks over the Defenders. And in the UFL championship, the Stallions and the Battlehawks, I'm going to take the Stallions. They've won back-to-back USFL championships for a reason. They're that good. They're going to win the UFL championship, their championship for the 3rd season in a row. I just think they're the best team in the league by quite a wide margin, and I think it'll show with 3 championships in 3 seasons. And briefly going over my awards, MVP I think is going to be AJ McCarron again. He's arguably the best quarterback in the UFL. Really good player. I think he goes back-to-back in MVP. Offensive Player of the Year is Stallions running back CJ Marable. He is one of the more underrated players in the league. I definitely think the Stallions have at least one award winner. I thought could be MVP if their quarterback ends up playing a full season, but because we don't know who that is, I decided to go with Marable as Offensive Player of the Year instead. And Defensive Player of the Year, I also have that being from the Birmingham Stallions, and that is DeMarcus Gates. He was a monster with the Stallions back in 2022. Made the NFL last year, is back with the Stallions this year, and I think is going to have another insane season. But those are my 2024 UFL predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications so I do my best to post as often as possible. A lot more UFL content on the way. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications so I do my best to post as often as possible. And I will see you in the next video.